So, folks, we have a few bills coming over from the Senate that we've introduced three recently, and S3, an act relating to water quality of the waters of Vermont, is one of them. It's got a vague name. It is a study committee to look at the state's anti-degradation policy. And what I wanted to do was see if folks had thoughts on it or other witnesses they want to hear from. We did hear from Green Mountain Water and Environment, which is a group that represents our water treatment plants and possibly, I guess, wastewater and water treatment plants. So they want to come in and testify that they would like to be part of the study group. Thought it would be good for us to hear from them, for all of us. And I guess I'm curious if members have questions or thoughts on this bill. Representative Tagliavia.
Pretty sure I didn't see or hear anything with respect to JFL doing some sort of analysis to find out what kind of cost we're talking about. And I don't mean cost of the systems, I mean cost to the homeowners, whether they be lakeshore associations or individuals. So we have an idea if this study makes any suggestions right out of the gate, we know what kind of expense we're talking for the average Vermonter who may be subject to these regulations, if they're suggested.
Okay. To think about how that works relative to, I mean, currently there's a procedure that people are subject to. So I think what you're asking is what is the cost to a watershed, so the people who live in a watershed of going from a B1 to a A1? I don't really know what you're asking.
Water, no, to change, like we heard testimony from someone, and Harbor with names, but there were 7 property owners who abandoned their single wastewater treatment. And they put a community wastewater treatment. It didn't meet the gallons per day, but it apparently looked like it was going to work. So maybe looking at that, keeping that in a study and going with the higher gallons per day. I can't remember what that was, but looking at that cost so that, you know, pick a lake, whatever lake it might be, and find out how many there might be and what the actual cost would be to do this conversion, especially if it was going to be as a preventive measure. So we had an idea.
So
Richard used his example of having a camp, and what would the average lake shore owner who's maybe got a camp that's been in their family for 100 years, what are they looking at cost-wise for this?
Okay, just to try to still kind of understand. So because that lake is still a B, they were able to pool and create a larger system.
Right.
So this study doesn't look at changing anything, looks at how to implement an anti-degradation policy, through rule and transparently, as opposed to through procedure. But then also, right now, if you're an A, there is a restriction of 1,000 gallons per day on-site septic. So I'm still not grasping which cost you track.
That cost, going to the anti-degradation to go from B to A will prevent something from dropping.
Okay, so that's what I said the first time. So the cost of losing the opportunity to have a larger septic. But this is also looking for how to not have that be the constraining factor. So you're saying you want that in the study?
I would like to see JFO give us some analysis of costs.
I don't know if they'll be able to, unless you have a very specific example.
It seems like we've come across some statutes that after they go to rulemaking, the unintended consequence is the additional cost to the economy. And I think that needs to be considered.
Representative.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could also look at the cost if we don't do anything,
Mm,
you know, just what it costs to clean up, because we have a lake, you know, in St. Albans in terms of ag runoff, that's costing millions of dollars. And because the EPA has come in, the EPA came into Mallett's Bay and said we had to put a sewer in, and no one wanted it, you know, because of the cost. And now it's costing Colchester citizens thousands of dollars to fix it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we have to look at things as investments to avoid costs.
Representative Shapen.
Just to problem solve here, I guess. I'm wondering, so number 5 on page 3 says recommend legislative amendments and identify any rules, policies, or procedures that may require revision to implement the study group's recommendations. Are we maybe just asking for some fiscal analysis of that?
Yeah, I
And
think that's,
I
that's a
guess I'm
great spot
curious, I
for it.
guess I would think that that wouldn't usually happen in the bill. It would usually happen when we get this report, legislative leadership, or I don't even know. I've never personally requested something of JFO, but isn't that something that often a chair or someone would request of JFO? I guess I'm just trying to understand whether it is appropriate to put it in the bill or a JFO report on.
I think he's seeing if we can do something now, but
If
But
there's a way
really
we
just
can
related
put
to these,
wording in there,
whatever
yeah.
they're recommending to us gets a JFO fiscal note.
Yeah, I think that would cover it for me.
Just about maybe can't say anything because we don't know the specifics, but whatever their note says.
yeah, I don't know. I've never seen that happen. I guess we can.
In a bill.
In a bill.
Right, usually the request for the fiscal note would come after
After
receiving.
we
the
decide to take
recommendations.
something up.
So I'm just sort of like making that observation, but also like, if we know we want it, is there a way to build it into the bill? I don't know. We can ask questions for that.
The fiscals, no, for the study is what, 14,000? Is that what it was? I think.
I think it is.
Yeah, a couple of recommendations on the study team membership. The section 6 clearly identifies for representing environmental advocacy groups. I think section 5 is intended to, so it's, you know, representing industry, but I'm wondering if we could clarify in section 5 that with the
You just say what page you're.
I'm sorry, section 5 under subsection little b on page 2. Yeah. So I'm wondering if we can add a phrase to number 5 there that just says there we go, that are not or and have not been representatives of nonprofit environmental advocacy groups. Number 6 is specifically look for 2 people from environmental advocacy groups. Those could be, I think number 5 is intended to be not that. Let's just make sure that it's specified as there are not and have not been representatives of nonprofit environmental advocacy groups. And then also numbers 1 and 2, they're supposed to be representatives from House and Senate, if we could say 1 from each of the major parties, or at least both not from the same party, but even that. So I would prefer to say 1 from each of the major parties.
Adrian.
That was on the previous page, page 1. Numbers 1 and 2, in terms of the list of membership. There we go. So on line 18 there on page.
Yeah,
page
I see it. 2 current members, the House.
Yeah, House, shall be appointed that are not members of the same party, or preferably that are members from the two major parties.
There are three major parties.
Yeah, I know, that's why I struggle with exactly how to word that. But, I want to make sure we get and I'm trying to be respectful for, understand, that there are more than two major parties, more than two parties represented. So. Trying to figure out how to word that to ensure we get broad view on things.
Representative Logan.
I mean, we typically in study language like this do say who are not members of the same party.
Yeah, that's been.
Yeah. So I don't have a problem with that. Which line? I'm sorry, I lost track of that last one.
Line
Page
18 and
one.
line 20 on page 1. Very bottom of page 1.
Thank
Two
you.
current members of the House and two current members of the Senate. Just want to make sure we're all from the same party.
Got it.
I guess on your first thing on the number 5.
Yeah.
I have not been, I mean, there are certainly, we heard from 2 consultants, one of whom I know for sure has history of working for the Agency of Natural Resources, but has been representing businesses in this building for longer than he worked there. Are you presuming to eliminate someone like that? I wonder a little about, I get your point.
Yeah.
But I also have concerns about how you get there, and I
Right.
really haven't seen any gamesmanship in that arena before. I see a lot of very straightforward acting when we have these study committee. I mean, I appreciate the input.
Yeah, you understand where I'm trying to come from there. Just make sure that number 5 doesn't turn into just more of number 6.
I don't think it will, even based on who we heard from the other day. All right. And I guess Representative Taglivia, to your point, I feel like maybe you could put in a request to UVM's research division, because I think the thing actually between you and Representative Austin, you know, if you want to explore the cost to the individual versus the cost to society, which is sort of what you two are considering, which I appreciate, that it's actually a larger study than this group would have the resources to pursue, and that, to your other point, that the legislature that takes up any potential changes would ask JFO for a fiscal note on those changes after the recommendations came back. That would be my suggestion.
The reason I suggest it is because I think it would be good to know those numbers just going in, especially if this study was going to be recommending some sort of a change to statute. Be nice to know what the additional regulations are going to end up costing.
They're not, so also just to be clear, we already have, we're implementing anti-degradation through procedure today. So the only adder would be is if your water body is officially upgraded, but we also know that if it's meeting Class A standards today, the agency has to make sure that what they approve still meets Class A water quality standards, whether or not public process has occurred to officially do it. So there isn't really an adder. It's like, from an economics point of view, is it an opportunity lost? That's what you're looking for. But the flip side of the opportunity lost is the cost to degraded waters. So, You had your hand up.
Is this an EPA? I thought this was an EPA.
Water Act, yep,
Right.
this is happening now, this is a study.
Because
too.
we spend, I feel like we spend a lot of money repairing things that we should have been doing, like the ag, the CAFO. That's costing us, I don't know, thousands of dollars in water quality and in farming. And it bothers me that I'm paying money when people are saying to me, you need to do this now, or else it's gonna cost this much if you don't. And then not doing it, and I just resent having to pay for things that could have been prevented. It's frustrating to me. I look at climate change. I look at this thing with the gas now, with the oil. I think we've been saying this like for 40 years, that this is gonna happen. And now it's happening, and now, it's costing $4.50 per gallon of gas. And we've been trying to avoid this. So I'm sorry, just don't get me going. It's just expensive.
I just want to say I appreciate you saying that repeatedly in this committee. It's a really important sentiment to keep in mind when doing environmental policy.
Yeah.
So thank you.
All right, any current final thoughts? You will Thursday hear from Green Mountain Water Supply. We can ask for two numbers not from the same party. And yeah,
And I would appreciate some language on 5 there to make sure it was turned into 6. I know that the example you brought up was somebody who previously worked for the Agency of Natural Resources, but I wouldn't call that an environmental advocacy group. I hope.
well, I guess I'm curious, who is that for you? Like, is VBSR an environmental advocacy group? If you're a business who's in businesses for social responsibility, I guess that to me feels very if you want to bring some language to the committee, you should do that.
Should do what?
If you want to bring some language forward
Okay.
that we can talk about. Representative Chapin.
I'll just share, I understand your concern that somebody making appointments or multiple people making appointments could, bring bias into this by what you're talking about, but I personally think it would be a huge shift in sort of common procedure when these kinds of things are set up, and when these kinds of membership-based groups are set up in statute, to be like, and this person can't also represent any of the other types of things, because often it's like, you need 2 builders, and you need somebody with an environmental background, and you need somebody from a municipal entity. And if we started doing, like, if you did that for 5, why wouldn't we want to also do it for 6? To ensure that the nonprofit environmental advocacy organization people don't have potentially some bias towards business and stuff. Like, I don't know that I'd want to go down that path of trying to make sure anybody on a committee has only one interest ever in their background. And we don't have enough people in Vermont play so many different hats and sit on umpteen boards because we the highest percentage of profit organizations in the world. I guess I think that it's I understand your concern, but like the chair said, that's not been my experience. I've sat on these boards, I've helped appoint people on these boards for the state, and I've never really see that play out in a way that people are construing the position to actually be more like a different position. I've never seen that. I'm not worried about it. And I think it would actually really be a departure from the norms of how our body does this work in statute. And so I'd be really reticent to build that in. And if we did build it in for 5, I think it would be only fair to be building it in to all of the commissions. And I just frankly don't think that there's people in Vermont that only have one hat on.
Yeah, very few.
So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. Al.
Right, it's like Mike has joined us via Zoom.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I'm not sure if you've heard any. We're winding down our discussion of S223. And if you have questions or concerns that you are aware of now, you could feel free to share them.
No concerns right now. Thanks for letting me know where we are in the agenda.
Sure. All right. With that, we can shift to S218, an act relating to reducing chloride contamination. Just another reprise. This bill remains very similar to the one that we passed out of this committee last year. And then the real thing that happened on the Senate side, I think, is that the judiciary found a solution to the legal part of it. And we've walked through that with our legislative council. And in fact, our judiciary committee just heard from Michael on those changes to it. And I saw him check in, but he went the other way after. So I think he was going to stop by and give us the update. But anyway, they just took testimony on it or heard it from Michael. Members have questions on this or further witnesses? We've heard a lot of witnesses on this topic last year. If not, we will consider a vote on this tomorrow, depending on what we hear from our judiciary committee.
Can I just get clarity on the incentive? Because I think it's a little bit different than on the other bill that we were looking at for people to do the training.
You're talking about the legal part of it?
Yes.
Well, I think that I'm not the person to provide that. But if you want more clarity than what Michael did, he did walk us through it. You could look at his testimony again. That would be my recommend, or talk to him directly.
Okay.
And Ella was all set to be the reporter of this last time. And so you're ready to do that again?
It's been ready for a year. I've made some updates and I did take a couple notes, Sarita, for my report
Oh,
about the
great.
change in the liability. So I'd be
Great.
happy to
Yeah.
discuss.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Sure.
Thanks.
Stopping by. All right, any other thoughts or questions on this one? All right, well, with that, I guess we'll break till 2 when we are going to hear from the Agency of Natural Resources.